Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Career Tips to Go LinkedIn Live. And with me today is Emal Bariali, and he is an AI expert. And I couldn't help. I listened to his podcast with my friend Dean Clarera, and I said to Dean, please introduce me to Emal because AI is taking over and I need to know much more about it. And not only that, but to inform the clients that I work with about artificial intelligence. So welcome, Emal. I'm so happy you took me up on the invitation. And I am looking forward to hearing all about artificial intelligence and all such good stuff. But
Yeah, thank you.
before we start, can you just give us a quick overview of who Emal is and why you are the expert to talk about this subject?
I think expert is a bit of I think you're being very gracious by calling me an expert on chat GPT and AI, but I definitely am an expert in business analysis. I started my BA career in 2005, and I worked as a permanent employee till about 2012, and I started doing business analysis consulting in 2012, and that's what I've been doing up until essentially last November. And now I've decided to start teaching business analysis and also looking at how we can incorporate AI into business analysis practices for my consulting practice, because I'm still
Mm-hmm.
a consultant as well. So I would say that I have a lot of expertise in business analysis, and I think I'm trying to stay ahead of the curve on AI.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I can call myself an expert, but I'll do my best to share what I do know. So thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much. And so let me ask you the first question. Emal, what AI tools are available to business analysts today?
ChatGPT is probably the most popular one that's out there right now, and that's the one that I've spent quite a bit of time in to do some research and to figure out how it can help business analysts. But there are a whole suite of other tools and that are coming out really on an hourly, daily basis. So
Mm-hmm.
the tool set's growing, but ChatGPT, I would say, is probably the most popular one, and for me, the
Mm-hmm.
most useful one. Folks that are interested in generating images have a couple of different options. Midjourney, for example, is another one. But specifically for business analysts, I would say ChatGPT, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to the release of Microsoft's Copilot. So those are the top two, I would say.
Oh, okay. So you mentioned Microsoft Copilot. I've never heard about that one. So it's Microsoft Copilot for Office 365. Can you
Correct.
explain, give me a sense of what that is?
Yeah, so Microsoft Office 365 essentially is a suite of Office tools that basically almost every mid to large size enterprise uses in the company, right? In their company. So Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft PowerPoint. They have a couple of other enterprise class tools such as SharePoint and Microsoft Azure DevOps. There's a lot of these types of tools that Microsoft has
Mm-hmm.
that companies already use to manage their day-to-day work. What Microsoft is doing with Copilot is that they're incorporating a lot of the, I want to say, the logic and the lessons learned from ChatGPT directly into those tools. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, instead of having to go into ChatGPT to ask it a question, you'll be able to do that directly in Microsoft Word or
Mm-hmm.
Excel, or any of the other tools that they have in their Office 365 kind of suite of tools.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best examples I would say is from the material that they've released so far. They're being very tight-lipped about it up until now, but they have kind of given us some details.
Okay.
One of the best use cases I've seen so far is that they open up essentially a spreadsheet of data and they start asking the Microsoft Excel questions about the data in the spreadsheet, and it just
Mm-hmm.
gives you a very quick answer. So instead of having to make sense of the data yourself, you can say, hey, here's a list of all of the sales that we made in the last quarter in one spreadsheet, and just ask it a question. Say, hey, what is our top selling product?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of you having to scroll through or to do filters and sorts, now Copilot's going to start answering a lot of those types of questions for you just by you asking it in very natural language. So that's probably one of the examples that they've provided that's stuck in my mind
Mm-hmm.
as the usefulness of AI in Copilot. So I'm really looking forward to what they release.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
But if this particular tool, or if AI
Hmm.
generally is going to be doing so much work, how would that affect um say employees? Because I know there is a fear somewhere there of these tools are coming and they're going to take away my job and all of that. How does that factor into it?
I would say that I'm approaching AI like really I approach almost any other big thing that gets introduced into the work world or society, which is with a mindset of trying to figure out how I can leverage the tool to
Mm-hmm.
do my job better. And as part of the research that we're doing for business analysts, I'm finding that it isn't able really to replace a lot of the human aspects of the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And but it does at the same time give you the ability to kind of handle a lot of, I'm going to say, the grunt work much more quickly and with a lot
Mm-hmm.
less effort. A lot of folks, I think, maybe kind of in fear that their jobs are going to get replaced, and there's probably going to be some of that happening. But so far from what I've seen, I don't see it really kind of replacing a lot of analytical work
Mm-hmm.
very quickly because
Okay.
yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls. AI, for as good as it is, it makes quite a few mistakes, and it does have quite a few pitfalls that I think render it incapable of actually replacing a lot of the kind of higher level or the deeper thinking that a lot of analysts especially have to do.
Mm-hmm. And so, what advice would you give to analysts or employees generally on how to embrace these kind of tools?
I would say dive in head first into AI and try to figure out how you can make yourself more productive by leveraging AI, because productivity, I think, is probably the key to success
Yes.
for most professionals. And I think it's a massive opportunity for many professionals to say, hey, look at how much I've been able to get done with such a small amount of resources expended. That difference really kind of between the effort you've put in and what you've been able to produce, some of that difference kind of belongs to the employee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a way, I think, for employers and employees really to benefit by reducing the amount of effort it takes, producing higher output, and figuring out, hey, that extra productivity now could result in higher salaries. You can say, I'm doing a lot of the vetting and a lot of the analytical thinking that the robot's not going to do for you. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of senior executives, for example, are not accustomed to sitting down and just having a conversation with a chatbot and trying to figure out whether what it's telling them is right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the vetting work that these AI tools can do is now work that is of higher value now. So I would say that most folks should really be doing whatever they can to try to incorporate it into what they do today and trying to figure out how they can be more productive.
Mm-hmm. And when you say most folks, and you mentioned executives just earlier, are you suggesting as well that executives try to learn learn about these tools as well, or you're talking about the business analysts who have to do the critical thinking piece and then pass on, like their research or what have you, to higher levels?
I encourage everybody to learn it, but knowing, I mean, given the experience that I've had in working with a lot of execs, their world is, they deal with so much complexity on a
Mm-hmm.
regular basis to begin with that trying to rely on a tool and trying to vet a tool that's completely new and trying to figure out how to incorporate it in their work and into their decision making, I think is maybe a bit of a big ask. I think
Yes.
some executives, I think, I mean, I'm all for it, but I just don't see it happening at the executive level as quickly because really, if you look at what the role of an executive is to make decisions and
Yes.
to maintain a certain level of stability in the organization and competitiveness,
Mm-hmm.
incorporating a completely new tool set into something like that, I think is going to take a little bit longer. And I think there's a huge opportunity for the folks who can leverage AI to do that on the executive's behalf and try to kind of vet the output of AI tools to make sure that executives are getting good, clean, reliable data that they can use to make decisions.
Right. A question came in, and I've
Mhm.
I've put it on the screen here. Is it reasonable? And Pavel is asking that question. Is it reasonable that many junior and middle positions will simply be eliminated since one senior can do all the manual work in a few minutes via AI? That's a great question, and kind of ties into the question I asked earlier. So, can you answer that then?
I would say it's too early to tell right now, but I'll speculate. I'll speculate just based on what I've learned so far. I think that in the world of business and systems analysis, there are tasks that are repeatable and very manual that a robot can do very easily. And then there are other tasks that require judgment and intuition, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
that a chatbot really, AI can't really kind of explain why its intuitive senses would point somebody in the right direction. So there's these two really categories of analysis work that kind of exist. I think the repetitive stuff is going to get taken away fairly quickly. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you're an analyst who's only doing repetitive manual work, then maybe you're at risk. If you're that type of an analyst and you're interested in getting into doing deeper analysis work, then I think that that's probably your best bet in
Mm-hmm.
making sure that that doesn't happen to you. And we've run a couple of test cases inside of our community where, for example, we've gotten it to write SQL statements for us, and it's a very
Mm.
difficult skill to write SQL for many non-technical folks, but and it's something that the machines can do very, very well. And so if you're doing that type of a work and that's your only job essentially, then you may be at risk, right?
Okay.
So I think it's too early to tell, but that's really my speculation based on what I know so far.
Right. Thank you so much for that. And I hope Pavel will find that answer quite clarifying.
Hmm.
Okay, my next question for you. How have you and your community used ChatGPT so far?
The best test cases we've had so far really are with, first of all, with writing SQL queries. One
Mm-hmm.
of the things we did is we told it what our database looks like, and we said, "Can you write me a query that does this?" And I was completely blown away by its ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Saved me probably a good 30 minutes of having to write and test that SQL query myself.
Mm-hmm.
We've been testing it to see if it can help us learn new domains. So, for example, as a business analyst who goes from one client to another client, as I do as a consultant, oftentimes I have to learn about their business before
Mm-hmm.
I can really be useful to them. And so, for that purpose, it's great. I can ask it a million questions about how the mutual fund industry is structured if I'm working in that space. And hey, explain to me all of the detailed nuances of how a mutual fund gets stored and how it produces value for customers. It'll go in and explain a lot of the rules and help you really kind of get yourself onboarded very quickly onto the subject matter. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another test case that we have. And we have really, on our website, we have a full research plan now for a number of different cases that we're looking to test out and kind of give folks an idea of whether it's going to work for them or not. So those are the two big ones. I would say if I could throw in one more, I would say the third one is its ability to write user stories, use cases, requirements for business analysts that has the ability to actually give you a really good starting point with that as well. So
Mm-hmm. Very
probably the
good.
top
Thank you.
three. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much for that. And just based on your answer to that particular question, I'm putting myself as a career coach.
Hmm.
We have to coach, clients about so many parts, so many aspects of the job search. And the fact that you were able to use it to write SQL queries, I was just thinking that probably as a job seeker, they can, in terms of even research, like you say, they're going to be interviewed by, somebody else. Those they could probably use ChatGPT to get some preliminary information
Hmm.
about the person they're gonna meet.
Right.
What do you think?
I think, yeah, that's an area of stakeholder analysis that we actually have on our research roadmap. For anybody who's interested, I can share the link of where that roadmap is. But on our research roadmap, we have stakeholder analysis as one of the areas that we're looking at. And what you can do with stakeholder analysis, what we've seen so far is that you can learn about a person's job so that you have a better understanding of what their world looks like before you engage them. And so, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if I'm about to go into a meeting with, let's say, the sales folks inside of a company. Well, what does a sales director actually do, like on a day-to-day basis? I might not have any visibility into that, but I can ask ChatGPT and it'll give you a fairly clear picture of how sales process works and what a
Mm-hmm.
director is responsible for versus what a salesperson is responsible for in many organizations. It can help you to learn about the folks that you are looking to have a conversation with so that you understand maybe some of the issues and challenges a little bit better. So that's an area of research we have. It's a little bit farther in our list, but it's there.
Right. So it makes you better prepared, actually. So if you're going for an
Yeah.
interview, for example, it makes it, yes. Another question came in from a LinkedIn user,
Hmm.
and it says, as a business analyst considering AI, name some technical knowledge that would help for career.
Technical knowledge, the way the guidance that I give to folks who ask that question generally is that you should strive to understand enterprise class software as best as you can. And so what does that mean? That means that there is software like the software that we install on our machines and use, right? Like Microsoft Word, for example, right? That's one
Mm-hmm.
class of software called consumer software, typically that we use. There is this other class of software called enterprise software,
Mm-hmm.
and there are specific things that go into helping clients design enterprise class software that still has a lot of value. No AI tool is really going to be able to do that for companies
Mm-hmm.
in doing very complex design for solutions that help them meet that. So if you want specific technical knowledge, I would say start a little bit broadly, try to understand the different types of enterprise software, and then understand what, as an analyst, you need to do across the different layers of an enterprise piece of software. Um, I can elaborate a lot more on that. Picture gets a little bit complicated. I don't want to take it too far, but I would say there are specific layers of an enterprise class software. Try to understand that really well, and that'll give you a really good jumping off point into the technical skills. Because from there, you can get into SQL. From there, you can get into workflow design. From there, you can get
Mm-hmm.
into user interface design, for example, depending on which area you want to specialize in. So, um,
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for that.
sure.
My next question, are there any pitfalls that you think professionals should look out for? That's a good question, actually.
Yes, yes. And I've run into some of the pitfalls myself as we've been doing our discovery work with a lot of the AI tools that we have. I would say probably one of the biggest pitfalls is that ChatGPT especially speaks with a lot of confidence, and oftentimes it'll get things wrong, but it will give folks the impression that it's right because of the confident tone that it takes. So that I think is a major pitfall because a lot of folks I think would tend to kind of let their guard down a little bit and stop thinking critically when they hear a machine talking with such confidence. I would say that
Mm-hmm.
that's a major pitfall. And I've fallen into that myself where I just kind of take it for granted that maybe it's right. And it's been pointed out to me even on a video on our YouTube channel. One of our commenters pointed out that and I'm an experienced professional, I made a gigantic mistake in just accepting what it had to say because there's a part of my mind that really kind of just automatically shut down when I started to rely on the machine a little bit too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is a very crystal clear idea of the types of pitfalls we can fall into because I've fallen into it myself. So if I've been doing this since 2005 and I'm falling into this, it's definitely a risk for the folks that are just kind of starting out in their careers and starting to use these
Right.
tools. So
I
that's
was,
the big one.
sorry, just to piggyback on something you just said, I was talking to someone this week,
Hmm.
and he said that with AI, and we are talking about ChatGPT in particular, he
Hmm.
said, where people are not going to be able to use their brains anymore because,
Yeah.
they're gonna, and I'm thinking that could probably be one of the pitfalls. I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, because if you can speak to a machine and it spits out all this information, it
Hmm.
doesn't allow you to do that much thinking. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts on
and
that?
I think that is a gigantic pitfall. And I would like to use, you might remember a time when we used to do math homework without the use of a calculator, right?
Yep.
And when calculators came out, I think a lot of folks said the exact same thing. Hey, well, if the calculator is doing all the math, then what are students going to learn? Well,
Yeah.
what ended up happening is that it gave students the ability to start thinking about higher order problems, right? More complex problem solving issues. Now, calculators are always right. They're never wrong because they
Mm-hmm.
get things, when you say 2 plus 2, it's always going to give you a 4.
Always four.
The
Yes.
pitfall with ChatGPT is that if you ask it 2 plus 2, it might say 5 or 7, but say it with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of confidence and slip that by you if you're over relying on it. So I think that I don't think it's gonna. I don't see it really. I think there's a lot more work that that they would have to do to make sure that people are confident in AI the way
Mm-hmm.
that they are in calculators, right? And so that I think is a bit of a long road for us to go down. And so I would say folks should just be aware. Don't just assume that it's going to give you the right answer. I've made that mistake myself, and I've fallen into pitfalls. And there's a likelihood that you will as well. So
Mm-hmm. So there'll always be the human element will always be needed
yeah, I think there's a certain
in
amount of
terms of
judgment.
in terms of analyzing the information that you're getting.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm.
And I think that there is always, when a person is making a decision, it's, have you ever had your Google Maps take you down the road that maybe ends nowhere and it
Yes.
tells you with confidence, right?
Yeah.
Those kinds of mistakes can be huge in certain industries, right? If you're, because the exact same type of mistake can be made if people start to over rely on these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say Google Maps has done that to me multiple times where it says, hey, take this other route, it's faster. And I take it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's something that Google Maps got completely wrong, and now it's taking me way longer. So
That
that,
that happened. That happened to me. I
yeah,
was going to the airport in Buffalo, and
yeah,
I know the direction, and
yeah,
Google Map was telling me to go here. And
yeah,
I said, no, because I'm going here. And you know what? It was right though, because there was traffic. There was a traffic jam.
yeah,
And because of that, it told me to take the detour, which I didn't take.
yeah.
And I ended up missing my flight.
Oh,
So
wow, wow.
in some respects, yes. We have
Yeah,
another question.
sure.
Another question just came on, and it says, I've noticed when testing GBT chat to produce requirements, many of the suggestions were ambiguous and had to be removed. Things like the system should be easy to use, the system
Yeah,
should be visually pleasing, etc.
yeah,
Each requirement being returned still requires analysis to develop a set of solid requirements. So I guess this person is just making a statement, I guess. Can you
yeah. And
expand on that?
sure, we ran into the exact same thing in one of our workshops. And for anybody who's interested in actually watching that, you can see it on our YouTube channel. But we have a good 40-minute video where we went through this exact same exercise, and it did the exact same thing. So a requirement like the system should be easy to use, I would never put something like that in front of my clients,
Mm,
because that is putting something like that. It is ambiguous, it's untestable, and quite frankly, I would say it speaks to a person's lack, an analyst's lack of understanding of how software development projects work, right? And so the system will, again, it's another pitfall. System will say stuff like this, and if you're not really applying your own intelligence and a lot of your own skills,
Mm-hmm.
you may lose credibility in an organization if you let something like that slip by in one of your requirements, right? And so there's a real danger in over relying on it. And I totally agree with that LinkedIn user is that when I ask it for things like that, oftentimes I have to cut a lot of the stuff that it suggests out because I know that it doesn't fit into what we're trying to do. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that just speaks to the fact that there's still a lot of intervention that's needed to get things to where they need to be. And AI is not going to do it for you.
Okay. So business analysts will still have jobs.
Yes, most will,
Okay.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
My next question here is, are there any other use cases for Chat GPT that you're looking to research further?
Yes, I'm gonna see, and I'm just gonna go to our to our site here. There's a
Mm-hmm.
whole list that we have on our research roadmap here. I don't
Right.
know if you mind me sharing that with you
No, not at
here.
all. Not at
Okay,
all. You.
okay. I'll share that out with the folks who may be interested in that. But if you just go to bablocks.com/AI, what you'll see is that we have a whole list of research topics on our roadmap. And even more so, we have a form there that you can fill out for any use cases you want us to include into our research roadmap. And so
Mm-hmm.
what that'll do for you is that it'll give you an opportunity to let us do the heavy lifting of the research for you if you submit your ideas there, and I'll get that link into the chat by the end.
Oh, okay,
So
great. Because I was
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
see if I could share the screen, but that's okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Somebody said, "Yeah, we are going." Let me put this. This said, "Yeah, we are going to get fired. It won't be because of AI, at least. Oh, if we're going to get fired, it won't be because of AI, at least so far." That's that's
yeah,
that's pretty, that's pretty hopeful. Yeah.
I think it's a bit tough. I think because maybe it's a comment on this current state of the economy, but AI is not there yet. And I think it looks like Deb just shared that link as well. Thank you for doing
Yes.
that, Deb.
Okay. I just saw that, so I'll put that
Okay.
on the screen
Thank you, Deb.
as well. Yeah. Okay. So let's continue. Um. So you were saying that you're looking at ways that GPT can help with the following stuff, and some of the things you named were like stakeholder analysis, stakeholder communication, enterprise systems, architecture and design, data cleansing, and migration. Can you
Hmm.
expand on those?
Yeah, the data cleansing one I think is really good. Is a really good use case that I'm anxious to get to for as part of
Mm-hmm.
our research. Basically, what happens in a lot of projects that business analysts work on is that oftentimes you need to export a lot of data out of an old system and import it into a new system that you help them design. That
Mm-hmm.
process is very error prone and it's very labor intensive. And
Mm-hmm.
so the data cleansing and migration exercises that some more technical analysts can be involved in, there may be some room for AI to help in that area. So that's an area that I have on the list of. It's way farther down on the list. I don't think we've even published that on the website. It's so far down, but um, it's on the list, and I think it's an area that can potentially add a lot of value to projects. That's one area. I think enterprise system design, we talked
Yeah,
about
we
a little
talked
bit
about that.
earlier, but I think that's an area where there are there have been some experiments that some software developers have done where they've tried to design simple software, and
Mm-hmm.
AI does a very good job of that. But once things reach a certain level of complexity, the
Mm-hmm.
machine just keeps on producing material, but not material that's of any help to the design. So I think being able to think very critically and think very methodically about bigger problems, higher value problems is where the opportunity is for most folks. And
Mm-hmm.
I think enterprise system design is one of those areas.
Great. You also
Yeah.
mentioned stakeholder analysis and communication. Can you talk a little bit about that stakeholder analysis and stakeholder communication, because that's important.
Yeah, stakeholder analysis. I'll tell you one way, one use case that I tested and it worked really well. So I pretended like I was starting a new client engagement, and I wasn't, but I went to ChatGPT and I told it I was starting a new client engagement. I said, this
Mm-hmm.
is a very big multinational company, and this is the type of project they want me to work on. Can you explain to me what some of the job titles are that I should be looking for as potential stakeholders? Now, it doesn't know anything about a company. That company doesn't even exist because the scenario I made up is just totally false, right? But it did a really good job of saying, hey, you may want to speak to the head of marketing about these subjects for a project like this. You might
Mm-hmm.
want to speak to a person who is in the finance department for this reason on a project like this. And so what it started to do was a lot of the pre-thinking that I do before I start a client engagement, it did
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that work for me, and it did it, quite frankly, as good, in some places better than I would be able to do it myself. So
Mm-hmm.
it really helped me to do stakeholder analysis before my first day on client site, and without even knowing anybody on site, it
Right.
started to give me that idea. So and when it comes to stakeholder analysis on projects, that's one of the big challenges is how do we identify the folks in the organization who can really contribute to this project?
Mm-hmm.
And that's in small companies, that's an easy thing. But once you hit medium, large size enterprises, that exercise in itself becomes incredibly difficult. And so it helped with that. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to communication, you can use it to soften your language a little bit. I don't know if you see my LinkedIn post, Daisy, but I tend to be very factual about stuff. And some of the feedback I've received from some of the folks is that, hey, you don't always just need to be talking about facts. Talk about something else. And I say, okay, maybe I can use Chat GPT to teach me because I don't think in those terms usually when I'm talking about
Right.
work. And
Yes.
so I'm trying to use ChatGPT to see if I can learn how to get myself to think a little bit differently about how I communicate with folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to stakeholder communication, for example, you can use it for that same purpose to say, hey, look, I'm usually a very factual person. Some people love that. There's a lot of people who really don't love that. So how can I
Yes.
make my communication a little bit more friendly for like a broader set of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily getting it to write your communication, but teaching you how to do that, I think is a good way to use it for that case.
Right. And I come back to the to somebody, to a job candidate, for example, because
Hmm.
some of the answers you have given would be the same for somebody, for a job seeker, for example,
Hmm.
because you're saying that before you made up this fictitious company and you throw it into the chat to say, I'm going to be doing this, that. Somebody, a job seeker, could do the same thing in terms
Yeah.
of, I am going to be interviewing with IBM in
Yeah.
this particular, department. Give me some, I don't know the person, but here is a job title. Give me an
Yeah.
idea of what this person does. And so it
That's
makes
right.
you so much more informed, that when
Yeah.
you go to sit in that interview or even to have a conversation, if you're arranging, for example, an informational interview, you already have some information
Hmm.
about that person that you can sorry, actually, bring to the conversation, and then they're going to say, oh my goodness, you're so much informed.
So well prepared. Hey, I've
Yes.
I've started to use ChatGPT for that specific reason, and I'll tell you, it makes me come across way smarter than I really am, is
Right.
what I said to somebody yesterday. But I think um, maybe that's the wrong way for me to think about it. Maybe I am becoming smarter than I used to be, right? Because in the past, if you're thinking about how you would have gone into an interview in the past, maybe you have a lot of fears of the unknown because you have no idea who you're speaking to, you have no idea what kind of questions they're going to ask, and that can create a lot of fear and uncertainty for
Mm-hmm.
folks, right? at
Yes.
at the very least, you now have really like a bit of a chat buddy who's really smart, who you can say, hey, I know you don't know anything about this company, but help me prepare for this a little bit. Tell me what you think this person might ask for
Right.
this type of a job. And you know that the person, that the chat isn't going to give you the answers, but it helps you to get your own gears turning. It helps you to prepare yourself so that when you walk in, you say, I
Mhm.
have some sense of where this conversation is going to go. I'm not just coming in totally blind, right?
Exactly.
Um, I do that for my, like I said, for the client work that, and for some of our students that we teach. I do that type of a thing to say, hey, a student at a junior level, what are some of the questions swimming around in their minds that I can answer when I'm teaching the class, right?
Yes.
Maybe I'm way too far away. I've been doing this for so long, I've lost that perspective of what somebody who's 2 to 3 years in might be thinking, right?
Hmm.
That's me doing stakeholder analysis on our students. Stakeholder analysis for somebody who's going into an interview is their interviewers, right? You have a panel of interviewers, you do some stakeholder analysis before you walk in, and you're increasing your chances of performing much better.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing that came to mind as well when you're talking is that they could also ask the question, like, use it to research. For example,
Yeah.
again, if they're going to be looking for a job at, say, Amazon, for example, they can ask the question, how is Amazon doing, how are the layoffs going, when last did they have, and what, those kind of questions. And again, it just makes you better prepared. So
It does. And
do I want to interview with Amazon if they're having so many layoffs?
yeah,
You
the
know?
one limitation right now of ChatGPT is
Hmm.
that it can only speak to stuff that happened up until September of 2021
Yes,
because
that's
that's what it's
true.
trained on. But
Yes.
but that's maybe changing soon. I think there are already some browser extensions that let it search the internet.
Mm,
So yeah, I think once it gets there, I think that that's an excellent way to say, hey, get me up to speed here. I don't know much about the subject. I haven't been keeping up with the story. Get me up to speed. What's going on this in this specific area? Whether it's
mhm.
Amazon layoffs or maybe it's another company who's doing massive hiring. There's news stories that it can read into and give you a good summary of what's going on.
Right. And at the beginning, you spoke about the Microsoft Copilot for 365.
Yeah.
Um, how how advanced would that particular tool be over ChatGPT? Because you're saying that ChatGPT can only go up to, say, 2021. But in terms
That's
of
an
looking
excellent
at
question.
what you
Yeah.
now know about
Mhm.
Copilot and its potential, what are your
That's an
thoughts on
excellent question because that's probably one of the biggest features of Copilot that Microsoft has already has confirmed is going to be there. So instead of relying on a data set that's up until September 2021, Copilot allows companies to actually train Copilot on their own data, up to date, up to the minute data, and it can start to use that information right away. So I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits that Copilot's going to have once it gets rolled out is that you don't have to ask it general questions. You can say, hey, how does my company very specifically, based on our policies and procedures that you've read, how does it how are we supposed to do this?
that?
And it
Mm-hmm.
can come out and say, well, the way that it's written in our procedures, you should be doing A, B, C, and D. Now you've saved the person from having to go through and wade through pages and pages of procedures to figure out how to do a certain part of their job, right? So I think there's a lot of those types of use cases that are going to be available in Copilot. I'm really excited, actually, hoping we can get access to it ASAP.
Yeah.
So I can't wait. Yeah.
They don't need any beta testers.
Oh, hopefully they do. I've been trying to get in, but unsuccessful so far.
Okay. And just to continue on with the Microsoft Copilot piece,
Hmm.
I think you had said something to the effect that, once it becomes available, and you're talking about drafting user stories and requirements directly into MS Word and so
Hmm.
on. Can you talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of very specific Microsoft Copilot related stuff, things that I want to test
Mm-hmm.
once it becomes available. I think if they haven't talked about incorporating it into Microsoft Visio yet, but
Mm.
I'm hoping that they do because what that would do is it would give it the capability to do a lot of the visual modeling that analysts have to do. So, for example, as an analyst, you sometimes have to do a process map. Well, for me to do a process map that describes what a company is currently doing can take me quite a bit of time because I have to speak to a lot of stakeholders. I have to really kind of work out the details of how they actually do it and then map it out. Well, if that stuff is mapped out in the procedure somewhere, I can just
Mm-hmm.
ask Visio to say, hey, can you just draw me a map of how this company does this? And
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it draws me something. Might not be 100% right. It might just be to say this is how we're supposed to do this. Gives me a really good starting point instead of me having to build that myself, take 2 to 3 days to build that myself before I can engage my stakeholders, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things that I'm looking for in Copilot. I think it may be able to do that not graphically in Microsoft Word. If it doesn't draw the picture for me, it might Microsoft Word might just be able to say, hey, this is how the procedures tell us how this process works today.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to turn it visual myself, but there's a lot of those types of cases I think that I have in the back of my mind that I'd like to test out.
Okay, so do you know if any, so you might not be able to get you haven't been able to be a beta tester for this Copilot, but
Mhm.
what from what you know, how many are they doing it on, on a limited basis, do you know, or?
They haven't released too much, but if you go to
Mhm.
bablocks.com/AI, I
Oh, okay, yes.
have a link to their announcement and their
Mhm.
blog that I'm
Mhm.
checking on a daily basis to see if they have any updates. So as soon as I find out, I'll reach out and let you know. But they've been a little bit tight-lipped. I mean, they've released some marketing materials and they've confirmed certain things, but
Mhm.
they haven't really, as of March 16th is the last time they posted on it, and I haven't seen anything after that about Copilot. So I'll keep my eye out. As soon as I find out,
Right.
I'll reach out to you, Daisy, and let you know.
Yes, for sure. And then I'm hearing about there's one for Google. Um, is it Barb or Bard or
Bard, yeah, Bard.
yeah.
I haven't. Being in Canada, we don't have access to it yet, but
Well, okay.
a lot of American folks do. I've been trying to get access to it as well, but the feedback so far from some other folks that have tested it has been that it's not really up to the same level as ChatGPT. So um, it doesn't look good so far, but
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't count Google out of the picture just yet. I think that
Because they're
this,
Google, right?
yeah, this is just we're just at near the starting line of this race here. So maybe not off to a good start, but
Hmm.
I'm not counting them out by uh, any stretch of the imagination there. I think that they probably got some tricks up their sleeves that they might come up with soon.
Right. Okay, so those are the prepared questions I kind of, had for you, but just
Hmm.
asking generally, when you survey the landscape, the
Hmm.
AI landscape, what are you seeing in your crystal ball for, and particularly from the perspective of job seekers or somebody who would want to get into that industry, I would say,
Yeah,
what are you seeing?
I would say if I was going to speculate, which again, it's all just take everything I say with a grain of salt because nobody knows the future, right? But
Right.
if you were to ask me to speculate, I would say that there's probably for job seekers, I think that you can use it as a tool, especially if you have more free time than the folks who are interviewing you. You have a bit of an advantage, really, in the short run, um, because you can prepare very well if you use
Hmm.
these types of tools versus if you just kind of rely on your on just on yourself to do things. You should kind of treat it like an advisor. I've been hearing a lot of people in the marketing world, in the world of marketing and sales, who have to write and produce a lot of material, a lot of content to put out there. Those
Hmm.
folks, I think, seems to me like there's a lot of fear in that space, especially because ChatGPT can write really well.
Yes.
I think that in the short run, uh, it may affect those folks, but what is going to end up happening is that once the internet kind of gets full of just all AI written materials, people are going to be able to say, okay, I can tell this is an AI article and just ignore it.
Right.
I think people have this finely tuned instinct to be able to tell whether there is real material there or not coming from a human judgment and intuition. I'm
Hmm.
speculating again, but I think
Yes.
that once we get over the initial kind of hump of having all of this AI generated material, people are just going to start to ignore it and it's going to lose its value. And I think we're probably going to go back to the world of having just real people sitting down and having conversations. And people want to hear what other people have to say, right? The robots can help you up to a certain point, but I think people really just want to hear what other people have to say, whether you agree with them or not. I think that that is eventually going to come down the line. There might be some turbulence between now and then, but in the long run, I see that happening.
Right. I was
Yeah.
while you're talking, I was looking for a link, a website that I bookmarked,
Hmm.
and it actually, and when I find it, I'll send it to you because what it does, you can once you have generated something on in a in say chat GPT,
Yeah.
you can then copy and paste it in this particular tool, and
Hmm.
it will give you an idea of how much, what's the percentage
Hmm.
of what they have found there to say this was AI generated as opposed to human generated. I
Okay.
tried
Yeah.
it once. I
Hmm.
tried it once, and it told me it was 100% human, which it wasn't. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
yes,
So the
yes.
robot
So,
didn't catch the robot.
yes,
Basically, yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but
Okay.
I thought I had had it on my bookmark, but I haven't found it. But when I find it, I'll definitely share it because that again is going to be important because you don't want to send your, especially if you're a content writer,
Hmm.
more a digital media person or communication person. You don't want to send your material. Somebody hire you, for example, to do
Hmm.
something, and you allow the AI to do it, and then you submit that as your own. So
Yeah.
um, what I'm noticing, and I noticed this on LinkedIn with Andrew Seaman,
Hmm.
he asked ChatGPT to write an article, but in it he had a disclaimer. He said the original of this was written by you know ChatGPT, and whatever, he went in and probably edited or what have you. So again, probably at least from a communication perspective, probably people need to put a disclaimer. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Possibly, but I think in the short run, that's probably the more honest thing to do.
Hmm.
But in the long run, I think people will see through it. Um,
Yes.
I think people will see through it because you kind of, if you let somebody else talk for you, especially a robot, I mean, it's missing your personality, right?
Yes.
Whether good or bad, right? I
Right.
mean, I earlier we talked about the fact that like, look, I'm very factual, right? But that's just a maybe it's a big part of my personality, and
Hmm.
maybe I don't need to soften it. I just like to talk about the facts, and I
Yes.
would like for folks to, the people who are drawn to that, maybe are rightfully so being drawn to it, right? So
Hmm.
I think in the long run, a lot of AI generated materials just going to come across as very lacking in some way.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
sense it. I sense it, but again, speculating. I'm purely
Yes, but
speculating.
and that's why the human element is going to be important.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I said earlier, I know some people in my sector, in the career space, many
Hmm.
of them are, and some were, and some are concerned that if a client is able to tell ChatGPT to write my cover letter, write my resume, then they're going to be out of business.
Right.
And my take on that is to say, have your client use it as a research tool. So let them put the job posting in there, let them put their resume in there and ask different questions. So when
Yeah,
they come to you for help, you are more prepared and you can spend more time on helping them to carve out these documents to make them themselves more marketable. So
that's right. More
it's
value.
scary in one way, but it's it's something that's coming and not gonna go away. So we just have to embrace it.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's just gonna encourage everybody or push some folks to do higher value work. And
Yes.
that's the way I think that's where again, there may be some short-term turbulence and a little bit of friction. Some people may
Hmm.
lose their jobs. In the long run, I think it's gonna force all of us to start thinking about bigger issues that maybe we can't think about right now because we're so tied up doing grunt work or
Hmm.
you know trying to figure out how to draft a resume. Maybe
Hmm.
we should be thinking about, hey, here's my resume, fine, but let me, as a coach, as a career coach, you can teach your clients how to provide more value to them, and that in itself, I think, is has more value in it.
Exactly.
So I think there's a lot of room there. A lot of what I said is speculation, and we don't know. No, again, nobody knows the future, but
Hmm.
that's what my view is at this
Yes.
point. Yeah, yeah,
Well, we might not know the future, but we know what's happening now.
yeah.
You
That's
know, so
right.
we just have to deal um,
That's right.
with it now. Yeah. Well, listen, it's 11:50. I don't know if there's anything else like that we didn't cover that you would want to cover or
I
I
think
mean,
there's, yeah,
yeah,
I would
sorry,
say
go
that
ahead.
there's, yeah, I think it's this field is changing daily. And
Hmm.
Deb shared, it looks like Deb shared a
Yes,
book from Reid
I'm
Hoffman
gonna.
that a lot of folks can look into as well around
Hmm.
GPT-4. But this is changing on a daily
Ooh.
basis. So
Hmm.
hey, what everything we talked about here, we may need to update in, in a couple of weeks, possibly. So
Yes,
I think it's a developing story, and let's just keep our eye on it and see where it goes.
exactly. I'm just wondering, there's another link. I wonder if oh, it's probably the same link that Deb posted.
Yeah, yeah. It looks
Yeah.
like the founder of LinkedIn looks like has
Right.
co-authored a
Yes.
book about ChatGPT. Okay, and
Hmm.
AI.
Yep.
Excellent. I'll look
And I
into
mean,
it.
Reid Hoffman, I mean, when he
Yeah,
started, LinkedIn, years ago, who would have thought?
yeah.
Um, oh, and Deb is giving the name of the book. It's called
Impromptu.
Impromptu, Amplifying Our Humanity Through AI.
I
That's
think
interesting.
that's the right I think that's the right perspective to look at this from,
Yes.
because just like if you look at how we've developed over the centuries, we've gotten away from the basics, right? I don't have to I don't have to figure out how to look for food,
Hmm.
spend 5 hours looking for food, right? Food is right there. It takes me 30 seconds to prepare a meal. What
Yes.
does that do? It takes away all of that effort that I spent just doing basic stuff
Hmm.
is now freeing up my mind so I can think about more important things, right? And
Right.
I think that book, Amplifying Our
I'll
Humanity
put it
Through
back.
AI,
Amplifying Humanity Through AI.
I think it's the exact same idea. Is
Hmm.
that how are we gonna get the robots to do a lot of the stuff that we really probably shouldn't be doing, so that we can focus on kind of evolving to the next stage of our evolution
Hmm.
in some ways, right? So I like
Right.
it. I like
Well,
it.
it's the same way that, like I said earlier, when computers were coming on stream, people
Hmm.
were worried about what's going to happen. They were using,
Yeah.
typewriters and all of that, and now look what has happened. And we have become so much more productive
Yeah.
with,
So much more. Yeah.
yes. So I guess we have to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, listen, if there's nothing else you want to share, we can just call it a day.
Yeah. I
Thank
think
you.
that's been great. I appreciate
Yeah.
you having me on.
Yeah. Thank
Hopefully,
you.
yeah, I'll try to give you an update if anything changes significantly and folks are interested in hearing. I'd love to
Yes,
come back and help us get caught up.
for sure. And I'm personally definitely interested in this Microsoft Copilot
Okay. Okay, good.
365 one because,
Okay.
we all use, I mean, most of
Yeah.
us use that. So I would really want to be ahead of the curve
Yeah.
on that particular tool.
Sounds good. Sounds
Yeah.
good. I saw Deb's comment. Thanks, Deb. Thanks for
Yeah.
coming and supporting.
Thank you so much, Deb.
And yeah.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Take
Yes.
care, Daisy.
Okay. So thank you so much, Emal. It has been a learning experience for me as well, because like I said, I don't know too much about I know it's coming and I'm aware of what AI is all about. But when I saw Chat GPT, it
Hmm.
really, really grabbed my attention and said, yes, we need
Yeah.
to talk about that. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent.
People are saying thanks.
You're very welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks so much, Emal.
Take care.
Yeah.